Okay, it's 7 o'clock. First thing we're going to do is introduce ourselves. We'll start with Chris.
Hi, Chris Pratt, Chair, Southland Conservation Commission.
Karen Reed, Chair of the Housing Authority.
John Wally, Chair, and a delegate from the Park and Rec.
Marcus Phelps, a member of the Planning Board, representative to the Conservation Commission, and also the Vice Chair.
David Gunn, member of the Historical Commission and the Historical Commission representative to the CPC.
Karen DeMayo, Community Representative.
Bob Horacek, Community Representative.
Does everybody have the hand up? At the top, you can see the background of the Community Preservation Act, which was passed in 2002. Supported through 3% local surcharge on taxes above $100,000 for residents. These funds, there must be 10% that goes to housing, 10% that goes to open space, and 10% that goes towards historic. The other 70% go, or we put it in a unreserved fund, which can be used for any project in any of those areas, including recreation. See the ongoing projects. We've been restoring the historical documents, archiving them. They were starting to turn to dust. So we've been doing that as an ongoing project. Wally Park is a project that is complete, I'm told, except for the actual testing of the new lights on the 90-foot baseball field and the softball field. Prifty Park Playscape, I don't know where that is. It's not finished. There were a few things banged up. We had some volunteers to help finish it, and a few things got banged up. We still have some more of the mulch to put down. Housing Authority lights, does anybody know where that is?
Yeah, we've just received the bill. Yep, we're redoing the front of Depot Court, and we've received it should start within a week. We're redoing all the lights and making it more accessible and brighter at night. In the process of doing it.
And also in the Housing Authority, we're repairing some water damage that was done through leaks in the ceiling.
Right, and remaking.
And repainting.
Yeah, and we did Sheep Pasture Road, replaced all the windows in the house we have on Sheep Pasture Road.
The fund status is always tough to pin down. I don't think we have it pinned down here, but we're pretty close. The reason for that is we collect taxes twice a year, and we get our 3%, and once a year we get a state match. And because we're a 3% community, we're in on all 3 rounds of payouts or matching funds, and we never know what that is until it comes in. Pending projects. Conserve North Pond. This you're going to be able to vote in favor of or reject at the town meeting. We have voted to dedicate $1 million from the Community Preservation Fund, approximately $280,000 from open space and the rest from unreserved. the McLaughlin Agricultural Preservation Restriction, we voted to pay $73,000 of the $730,000 that that project is going to cost. And a preservation restriction, what they do is they appraise the property twice. Once as its best use and once as a farm. And the people who own it are paid the difference with the understanding that it will be a farm in perpetuity. And the difference in this particular case was $730,000. And we, because we're a 3% community, only have to match 10% of that. Any questions so far? I think it's time we have Elaine. I want to put on your presentation for the reason why we want to contribute $1 million toward preserving North Pond.
Sure. Well, I don't have so much of a presentation, but my name is Elaine Puderoy. I'm the Mike, right? I'm the Director of Land Conservation at the Franklin Land Trust, which is headquartered in Shelburne Falls, Franklin County. We were asked just over a year ago to help with purchasing and preserving the 147 acres that is the subject of the $1 million vote. It's the last remaining frontage on North Pond, 2,500 feet, I think about 3,500 feet of road frontage. The town it's been on the town's radar for a while, so we've been working with town officials, the Conservation Commission, and the Department of Fish and Game to preserve it. So we have entered into a contract to buy the land for the appraised value of $5 million, which is a very large sum of money. We had the appraisal done. The town also had an appraisal done. All basically came in at that amount. It could just be high-end house lots, last remaining, having a lakefront, so very highly valuable. So we have been working with the town to raise the funds and also working with the Department of Fish and Game. And as it stands now, the Department of Fish and Game is prepared to put in $1.6 million to buy the eastern half that abuts the South Wildlife Management Area, about 84 acres. The remaining, which is about 62 acres, which includes all the water frontage and the vernal pools or wetland areas, and most of kind of the forested area, the town has voted to support purchasing for conservation land. The CPC voted to put $1 million towards that purchase. This is a little bit of a complicated project. What we are doing is also fundraising the difference of that. So we have $1.6 million over here from the state. We have $1 million in CPC if that comes through. The town also got a $400,000 land grant through the state that can be used to purchase it. And the Department of Public Works has supported putting in $25,000 towards the project for the water resources. So we're at like $1,425,000 towards the town. So we're essentially in a nutshell asking the town to put in $1,025,000, $400,000 from a grant. So this vote that we're asking at the town meeting is to support the $1 million. The Franklin Land Trust, in the meantime, and community residents, many of whom are here, are doing private fundraising. We're writing foundation grants, any, bake sales, golf tournaments, visit Krabby Joe's next week and eat, and they're going to give a portion. So we're doing a lot of other fundraising to match and make up the $2 million that is the shortfall. So the $1 million is critical. The project will probably not happen for that town portion if the town does not vote for $1 million. So I'm here just to support the CPC in asking for the town's vote. It is a lot of money, and a lot of people have an issue with the $5 million, but the town's not paying the $5 million. We're basically trying to get all the rest of it. It's an amazing project. If we're successful and the state preserves the 85 acres that they're going to get and restore it to grassland, it's going to be critical for endangered bird species, a myriad of other just wildlife habitat. It'll be the largest grassland area in southern New England. That is significant. It's significant for the state. It's significant for people to understand. It's a critical resource that's dwindling. The only other like grasslands that are like that are the Air Force bases that are large, and they're not managed for birds. They're very good about partnering with the state agencies to manage, but it's the second, that's second. But sometimes they don't want the birds. But so, the land in general, all of it, both pieces, will be open to the public for hiking, hunting, fishing, wildlife viewing, skiing in the winter, educational walks. The land will be preserved and protected for water quality. It sits on top of everyone's aquifer. Your drinking water comes from this. It's in the zone 2 of your well for Southwick. It's in the zone 2 of the well for Westfield, zone 2 of the well for Springfield. We are approaching those towns as well to give support. Obviously, it's more critical and closer to Southwick, and it's in the town. We're also talking with Suffield. We'll be meeting with them, I think, next week. They've asked us to come back. We've asked for their financial support. It's in their zone of their wells down on the southwestern corner. So, critical piece of land. And when you look to see what's going on in Westfield with contaminated wells and other areas where they're putting in millions of dollars in filtration and trying to find new things, this is a chunk that can be multiple purposes. Recreation, public access, wildlife habitat, water resources, and being able to canoe and kayak without sitting on top of somebody's dock and getting, feeling like you're encroaching in private space. So it's already a popular place, and I understand that. I've seen it, and so we're excited to partner with it. It's a tough pull to raise this much money. So the $1 million is one very large chunk. So we are asking people to vote for it. It will come off the tax rolls, and so that's a big concern. Fish and Game will take it off the tax rolls. The town is not going to pay themselves taxes. So, but I think the benefits, particularly long term, far outweigh. The other thing, we're giving the town that opportunity in preserving this to preserve a well site. They're going to we're going to survey out a well site. Maybe they won't ever use, but if the town ever needs a new well, they will have the ability to drill a well there and see whether that's a place for a well. Might never happen, but it will be reserved and set legally forever. And so that's an important piece, I think, that it was an opportunity to do that. It's not why the land was getting protected, but it was like, why don't we do this? And so that will be done. So that's kind of a very quick and dirty of why I'm here to just support it and hope people support it and answer questions about it.
Another thing is the tying together the two dead ends of the water system in town.
Yes, and exactly. The other thing is the dividing land of the boundary between the town portion that they decided on and the Fish and Game. There will be a water line easement that will connect houses at the south end of this property up to South Long Yard Road. So it will give the DPW a secondary water line easement in case anything happens. Right now, if there's some damage or other reason that's cut off, it really cuts off the whole. So it's kind of like
it makes a complete loop, so instead of having two dead ends where the water has a chance to accumulate and stagnate, it'll make a complete loop and the water will flow through there, and there'll be no dead end.
So that's a water line easement that will be put in place and given, and it'll just be a 20-foot wide width. It'll be the border, the parcel border of the between Fish and Game and the town. So you'll just see it as a mode road. So I'm just here to see if people have concerns, questions, anything that I can answer, or the CPC. And if you guys are supportive of this, it's great. And I hope that you talk to your neighbors and your family and your friends that maybe are not supportive of it, because if this doesn't pass, we probably will not be successful with this part of it. And we might still try, we probably will still try, but very difficult to raise this chunk of money. And the town needs to support it, really.
The other thing is that we do have the money, and I don't think anyone wants to see another 25 docks on North Pond, or we don't want to see 40 or 50 leach fields over our aquifer. Because we have some of the purest water in the country, and it would be a shame to contaminate it, basically. There are no sewers in the area, so any house that would be built would have a septic system right over our water supply.
People have concerns or just questions about how it's going to work, or no? You guys are great to come and
Didn't I see something in the paper about the town wanting to cut 35 acres out? What was that?
We're going to divide it into two parcels. One parcel will be owned by the town, which includes, what is it, 60 acres?
about 62, yep.
62 acres, which will include all of the water frontage and the woods to the east of it. The last acreage, how much?
Oh, 86, 84.
84 will be owned by Fish and Wildlife and controlled by Fish and Wildlife, and the entire parcel of 147 acres will be in a restricted area in perpetuity. Nobody will ever be able to do anything with it in terms of building on it.
Right. So the town, just to expand on that a little bit, the town portion, part of the requirement when the town uses CPA money and also this land grant for $400,000 is that they put a conservation restriction on top of the town-owned land. So the Fish and Game will hold this restriction. So it's the town will own it, and Fish and Game will hold the restriction on it that just outlines what the town can, how they can manage it. It's going to say they can do forestry, that they can have trails, that they can deal with invasive species, that if they want to do wildlife habitat management, they would work in consultation with Fish and Game, which I'm guessing they will be very willing to help if there's wildlife habitat management plans, and maybe even suggest any, because it is so critical in the habitat. The Fish and Game portion is protected immediately by Article 97 of the Constitution, so they don't have a restriction on it. Their ownership is the protection. But the town piece, it means it can never get turned into a school or tennis court or soccer fields, which it does happen. People give land to towns, and all of a sudden there's such a great need for that piece of land that they can, you know, the town works. Some towns often have no choice but to say, we want to turn this park into something else, and it's very hard. So this restriction will limit that. What's that?
Westfield High School, the soccer field up there.
Yes, I think so.
Land swap.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, you know, it's, people give land in good faith, and maybe it might just say something in the deed that says for conservation, but that's taken broadly. So this won't happen. It will have that restriction on it. Fish and Game will be partners with the town. You know, and I think they'll be great partners. They're so excited about the project. They don't want to see it fail. They're putting $1.6 million, which is an enormous amount of money for the state to put into a parcel of this size. So, yeah. The 35 acres might have been what there had been at one point, that there was a lot of discussion about how big the town, the acres, so it's changed in terms of what the town might have been interested in owning.
Any other questions or comments? Anyone on the committee like to make a speech?
What are the expected costs annually?
I am hoping that they're minimal for the town. I mean, the trails basically, and Dennis, you can certainly chip in, pipe in, or anyone else, the trails already exist because they're the old roads and paths, and I think everyone's agreed that those will be the paths. I'm anticipating, the town is looking to reserve a parking area, which is already where the gate is and kind of where they had the grassy area when you first enter off of South Long Yard Road. They will define a parking area there. That will be basically what it is, but it will be surveyed so that the town knows where they can put the parking. I think they're going to reserve a site for a composting toilet to address the fact that people will visit the property and there's no facilities.
Any idea what the cost is on that?
I don't know, but with
About $5 or $6 grand a year.
what, for a composting toilet? I don't know. And
Are they gonna gravel the parking lot?
I'm guessing they're gonna leave it just the way it is, because it's already it's flat and it's already got some pavement to it. Once the town has this as conservation land as well, there are trail grants through DCR that we would be able to assist with that can help with anything from signage to a kiosk to gates to trail signs, maybe even a composting toilet. It's not one that I've tried before. I haven't written a grant for that, but that's a reserve site. Doesn't mean it has to get done. It means they're going to reserve the ability to do it. Maybe that doesn't get done for 5 or 10 years. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't get done at all. That's really up to the town.
Do you have a feel for what the tax loss is gonna be?
Tax losses, I do not know.
About 50, a little over 50,000.
Yeah. Well, that's what they are now. Yes. Yeah. It's a significant amount of money. I would argue that the ability to reserve a well site and have that as a future safety net in case there's contamination is worth it.
I think it's good insurance.
I think it's good insurance, looking at what the surrounding, and close by surrounding towns are dealing with right now.
Is there any projected cost for like connecting that loop together on the southern end?
You mean the well?
That would be covered by the water department.
That would be the water department.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
I was just curious if anybody heard the number.
That's a DPW responsibility, probably in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $4,000 a year. Additional leasing will be probably another $1,000 a year, maybe more, maybe $2,000. You're going to have to look at probably increase, maybe Russ, you could speak to this, cost relative to, now we own another 60 acres of property that's under the town insurance umbrella, so we have to be concerned with how's that going to change our insurance premium.
Could I say something? Because
Should I finish, please?
Sure, go ahead.
So somewhere in the neighborhood of between large tax dollars, increased expenses, I'm thinking probably right around $25,000 a year. That doesn't include the lost revenue from just developing the waterfront. These lakes are essentially all developed for this property. This isn't a perfectly, undeveloped lake, either middle or south or north pond. Everywhere else except for this little piece of property is 2,500 square feet or linear feet on the lake is developed. So it's not like we're putting houses where there aren't any other houses. There's houses all over the place here, all right? At what they've given us, and you haven't seen the two appraisal maps, but what they've given us, they wouldn't look at it, I don't think would ever be developed the way they, or sold the way that the appraisers have outlined it. But there could, in my opinion, could easily be put 10 houses, 12 houses, and probably generate somewhere between $170,000 and $190,000 a year annually. And that's a huge cost for the town to make up. And something that should be taken into consideration when you're making a decision.
You classify that as an opportunity.
Yeah, that's an opportunity. That's not, and please understand this, this $4.9 and $5 million appraisals that we have are best possible use scenarios. There's no perk test that's been done. There's no conservation that's been looked at here. So the lots, the lots that the appraisers have put forth in their, plan don't necessarily, wouldn't necessarily pass muster. So that's another consideration too. And if you develop the lakefront, you'd still have the well, you'd still have the right of way for the thing, and you'd still protect the 86 or 84 acres for the state. So this is.
Well, you wouldn't have the well. You wouldn't have a well and have the same development with the zone one around the well. So what you're looking at for house lots would be taken up by some of the wells.
Some of the wells. You wouldn't lose them all, which might.
No, you wouldn't lose them all, but maybe somebody wouldn't put the well in there either. Houses go right up to 100 feet around that. Ruth,
You wanted to say something?
I just wanted to speak about the condition of the land because I've been hiking in there for years. And there's a lot of other hikers in there. The state had a problem for a while with motor vehicles, with the kids, the ATVs, but they managed to take care of that by putting up fences, and I think they put some cameras up, so that's limited that. But the condition for a hiker is perfect. They don't leave trash in there. If we see something in there, we pick it up as we go through. It's just like, it's very nice, and Seth Kellogg does his bird watch in there, usually around Mother's Day. So there's really no immediate work that needs to be done for people to walk through there and enjoy it. And if you go in the fall when the birds are migrating, you bump into the bird watchers. And if you ask them a question, be prepared to stand there for an hour while they answer. They really love it in there and to watch the birds. But we don't need to do anything to it right away at all.
Dennis?
We've heard Mr. Gratchuk and Mr. Wally speak on this. How did the other committee members feel? How does conservation feel about this?
I mean, this is a golden opportunity for us to preserve the last piece on the lake, and it's an excellent piece of land behind it. So it's not just the lake we're trying to preserve, it's also the land that abuts the lake. And like Elaine said, there's no other parcel around, and Bob has also said no other parcel on any of the lakes that has not been disturbed. This is the last parcel, the last chance to save it. So we feel strongly about this. We've been looking into this parcel and trying to preserve this parcel for the last 10 to 15 years. We've been looking at this parcel. So this isn't just one of those it is kind of a last ditch effort now because the owner wants to sell. So we're right down to the wire. So we're definitely in favor of wanting to preserve this parcel, not just for us, but for the wildlife that lives there and the quality of the water in town. It's an important thing that we do.
Another thing that has been mentioned that also abuts, besides the 270 acres that the Massachusetts Fish and Wildlife own, there's another 250 acres in Connecticut that abuts it. This would make it a 700-acre preserved area with waterfront. And we're not making any more of it. And if you look out, if you go to North Pond on a weekend, and we have some people here that live on the lake, they'll tell you that it's really nice to go out and anchor your boat and not be in someone's front yard. And it's the only place on the lake where you can do that.
I'd like to hear the planning board representative. We hear about the housing, and what is your take on that?
Well, there's various scenarios for the development, as have been discussed already. From a planning standpoint, you always have to consider the cost of community services when you do development. And any kind of subdivision costs the town money. Usually for every dollar of taxes that are paid in to the town, it costs $1.17 to support that development. And with open space, it usually costs about 56 cents for the taxes collected through like if you had an agricultural preservation restriction. So there are concerns from that standpoint as far as the cost to the town. And There's various scenarios for the development. I know the appraisers worked with a couple different scenarios, but that's the way it was set up. And there are different ways to look at it, but I think from an overall standpoint, both the water supply, which is going to be critical into the future. I mean, we're planning here for 25 to 50 years. And we have a wonderful resource here in Southwick with the Congamon Lakes and the aquifer. And people are going to be looking for places where they get drinking water because it's going to limit what can be done in a town, both commercially and from a residential standpoint. So that's what I would see as a planner.
I would just want to say too, the appraisal that we had done, the town had one appraisal, we had another. The scenario was 23 house lots that could go in there. Half of them were, I think 12 or 13 were the high-end lake frontage, and the rest were A&R lots, done according to town zoning, assuming perks, it sits on top, it's 40 feet of gravel. I don't think the issue of perks was a concern. So they did it according to the current zoning. It was not, there's been some other plan floated around there that has 70, 80 lots on it. That was not happening. This was 23 house lots, 12 of them extremely high end, the rest right along South Long Yard Road, just still quite lovely. That was where they came with. The cost of community services, 10, 15 years ago used to mean you'd want to limit houses because the schools had too many children. That is not the case anymore. So the schools are closing. We don't sit and argue there's too many kids. But fire, ambulance, road, highway, all the things of doing the subdivision, those are expenses the town pays for. Is this a balance? This is a balance. This piece will get taken off development. There's still plenty of other land in Southwick that is developable. Maybe doesn't sit on top of the aquifer. Maybe is not as critical for wildlife. So from my perspective, and I'm a taxpayer and a landowner, not in this town, but just up a few towns, it is a balance of where you do the development and where you work to save these types of pieces. That water supply, that potential well, it's not for next year. It's maybe for your grandkids. It's maybe for 20 to 30 to 50 years from now, but it will be there. So it is a balance. I totally understand the cost. There will be costs of added police, but I'm guessing that there's going to be a friends group. I'm guessing there's going to be people that, like Ruth said, that are going to care about this place and going to visit it, and it will be a place that is looked after, and quickly, hopefully, people will respect it. There's always crazy people. It doesn't matter whether it's the back of a 50-acre farm or whether it's going to be this town-owned parcel. There's always people that will do things that they shouldn't do. I also love that it's open for everyone. It's not, it's not going to be limited to just one thing or just bird watching. It's really so. I think in general, it's obviously I'm for it, but I don't vote here.
Elaine and Marcus are very correct in the fact that there are definitely extra costs. The first appraisal we had 85 house lots on it. That's on the finance committee, which I'm on, full disclosure. That's something we call revenue neutral, meaning we would get a bunch of taxes from those 85 houses, but they would bring in so much work for the DPW, for the roads, for fire, for police, and for the schools probably, that it would add a burden, and it would be, we'd make here and we'd be paying out over here. And again, to the aquifer point, I'm not interested in developing the property, but there's high rent lots that could be developed on the waterfront without even costing any additional police, fire, DPW, and any impact on the schools. That could be easily modified in the project.
Could they sell some lots on South Long Yard there to offset the cost?
Yeah, you could do that. The problem is you can't do it if we vote this in and we don't make those changes ahead of time. Because once the conservation restriction comes in, that's done. It's all done. It's in perpetuity.
So you're saying that the planning board could say, we just want a couple of real nice houses on the shorefront, nobody else can come in there, if that's what you're saying?
Honestly, Dennis, the way I would market the property is I'd go to Wall Street, I'd say, here's the lots, you know, build your summer home, and not even have any pressure on an annual basis. That's how I.
But if the property owner didn't want to do that,
Right.
then there's no way we could zone that, or the planning board could.
I don't know, that's probably a question for Marcus to see how that could mature.
A lot of people have asked, you know, just to zone it so people can't build that. I don't think that you can do that. Is that true?
That's true. You could zone it to where you would have to have a special permit if you put it in the agriculture and conservation zone. But you'd still be allowed as the owner of the property to have a single-family home.
I know Mr. Gunn has been a big proponent of this. What is it that why are you such a big proponent of this project?
Well, as a historical commission representative to the CPC, the historic commission doesn't have preserving this land one way or the other. But as a resident and taxpayer in town, even though I do not live on the lakes, I live on the north side of town, I do value open space for its ability for residents to have places to take part in nature. I'm fortunate that I have some land in my backyard that allows me to do that, just walking up my own personal backyard, but to be able to have land available for the general public to do this on, that's important to me. So that's how I feel about this.
Mrs. DeMaio, I believe you voted for this project?
Yes, I voted for the project. I have a lot of concerns about the $5 million cost.
Correct, yes.
But when it came down to that, they're only asking the town to come up with $1 million. I voted for it because I felt that the vote should at least go to the townspeople to have their input. So if we can get all this land for $1 million and preserve this property, because once it's developed, it's gone. But I do have some questions about it being an alternate well site. I do believe there was a selectmen's meeting where there was a variety of departments that submitted land that they would like to see preserved. And I think the water department also said there was another alternate site off of North Lawn Yard that could be preserved. So for full disclosure here, I don't want everybody to think that this is the only alternate site available. There is another alternative site that could be less costly. So the people in the town do have to educate themselves and make sure they know what they're voting for. I'm not going to say if I personally am for or against it, but I thought it should be brought to the townspeople for the townspeople to make the decision.
Thank you.
I think you all know that I'm a huge advocate for preserving this land. I've got a substantial amount of money involved. I don't live on the lake, I don't even own a boat. But it's an absolutely beautiful area. It's a beautiful piece of land. And I can't think of a piece of land in town that is more important to preserve than North Pond. And by the way, it's worth $5 million.
I just wanted to add one more thing too. I mean, the reason we, as a town, I believe, voted in the CPA was to preserve what we have left of the town as its rurality and its cultural integrity. And I believe that this parcel is one of those places that we would like to preserve for those reasons.
Thank you, John. There is some additional paperwork that's provided to you this evening We wanted to include the Community Preservation Act overview material, and that's some of the white pages, the selection criteria that the committee uses, and then the actual application form that is to be used by anyone submitting a project. And finally, there's the selection criteria that the committee uses to evaluate each project. I think that would cover most of the process. We did include a copy of the annual report, which will be included in the document that everyone will get at town meeting, and then it's available also at the selectman's office during the year, or in the town clerk's office, the annual report. So this is a complete summary of the money that we have received through the tax surcharge, the matching funds from the state, and also additional state funding. As John mentioned, with the agricultural preservation restriction, the state funds 90% of that cost. So we really pick up quite a bit of additional funding when we do the agricultural preservation restriction, or APR. And over the years, it turns out, because we've had projects funded regularly through the CPA money, and also the agricultural preservation restrictions, we're running about a 60% match from the state, which is a good figure. And I know it's going to be a little challenging, because in fiscal year 2019, there's some large communities that will be coming on, that will be participating as a community in the Community Preservation Act. That includes Boston, Pittsfield, Holyoke. So the money will be allocated to those communities also. So fiscal year 18 will be a strong one. 19 could be interesting. And hopefully the legislature will continue to support the state level fund and keep the percentage up. But Southwick, as you can see in that, has done a lot of projects in all the areas. And you see that in the report. And there's a little more information. The last page is a little more detail on the types of projects specifically, and some of the amounts of money. If anyone has any thoughts about projects that they think would be worthy, we're always open to seeing those. We have a continuous application process. I'd like to talk about that maybe a little bit tonight, but we take projects whenever someone submits them, and then the committee has a meeting and evaluates it and votes whether or not to recommend that project to a town meeting. Any questions?
Yes, Russ. Is this the time for public comments, John? I saw public comments and
Yep.
it's not on the North Pond issue. I didn't know whether this was the appropriate time or not. Are you going to have more time later on?
This is very appropriate.
All right. Sure. I have two issues that I'd like to discuss. And the first issue is concerning the playscape at Powder Mill School. I was part of the review of the town buildings that we leased to the school region. And when we took the tour of Powder Mill School, we found that the playscape was in dire need of repair, or actually replacement. One of the reasons for that was the realignment of the grades of the school. We now have younger kids at Powder Mill that are not able to use a playscape that they would if they were still at Woodland School. And I think we're all aware of the condition of the playscape and the drainage issues. And I know that they've come before you, and I would just like to emphasize, I would hope that the board would seriously consider this, because when talking with the school, they are working to come up with capital money. The PTO is working to come up with donations. But what has happened is the school is under a consent order to sewer. And if they do not have the sewers in place by December 31st of 2018, we can get fined, the region can get fined up to $25,000 per day. Southwick pays 86% of that cost. When the bids went out for the sewer, they came in approximately $300,000 higher. The school is now in a position where they do not have enough capital money to address the play-state issue. And I think it's an issue that needs to be addressed very soon. Kids are going through that every year. And we are being negligent if we don't address that issue. And I think this is a great opportunity for community preservation funds because we did use it for the track. Now that track has been a tremendous asset not only to the school system, but to the citizens of the town of Southwick because it's being used by people day and night. And I think if we had a playscape adjacent to that, that we would even get more use out of that track because parents would be able to bring their kids, as the kids go to the playscape, as the parents take advantage of the tracks or the fields around them. So I would ask this committee to strongly consider that for its next funding project. I know all the funds, if the citizens vote this $1 million, it's done for this year. But I would hope that we'd be able to look at addressing that issue next year. My second issue that I think is also a very high priority, and I think it's a very strong historical project where we do have historical money, and that is our canals that used to be in existence in the town of Southwick. And it's the canals that really made the town of Southwick. I don't know if anybody had the opportunity to review the pictures of the canal system at the Cultural Council's art show, but there was a gentleman there who did the drawings of how the canals look in Southwick and surrounding areas. He's also written a book. And David, I don't know, he said he was working with the Historical Commission or Society? Okay. And the gentleman is even, you know, I learned more, I think, in a half an hour with that gentleman than in my 60 years in the town of Southwick about the canal and Taiwan Lakes. And we're even going to go forward with putting up some historical signs to show people where the canals actually cross. One of them being down by the Georgios on Route 57. But I think we have the monies to start doing the design. I think town engineer Dick Reynolds, who's also chairman of the Lakes Management, had approached you. And I think there was some reluctance, there was some thought that this should be a burden of the town of Southwick. Well, CPA monies are tax dollars, and this is a very important historical project. So I would hope that you would reconsider that and act on it, because you just mentioned tonight, several members mentioned tonight, and I think water came up several times. Dredging of that canal is going to help to keep clean drinking water in the town of Southwick. But we have an opportunity to preserve the historical facts of the town, because it was the canal, which ended up bringing in the railroad, which ended up bringing in ice, and ended up bringing in recreation to our community. So the canal was really built down the south. So with that, I think.
You're talking about the South Pond Canal?
Yes.
The big problem down there are the beavers.
That's why it needs to be dredged.
Right. Yeah, the historical aspect of it is certainly a component to be considered, but you know what Dick Cornell presented was the focus of it is the dredging. It's not the historic preservation of a canal of a lot. Now there happens to be components of a lot in that area that could be some preservation work could be performed, but that was not the gist of his effort. His effort is to get the canal dredged for the water flow. There are other parts in the town that there are still some remnants of the canal.
and of the lots for the canal. And if it's to be put forth as a canal, as a lot preservation project, then I would look to see the scope expanded to include more than just one lot. So I think it really takes some fine tuning here to really determine how much a part of this project should be considered as historic in nature versus a dredging project.
I can appreciate that, but I think it all begins with the first step, Dave. I think this would be a great first step, particularly when we have the monies there and to preserve the history of the town of South.
If you were to rewrite the plan so that it, the design plan so it focused on the canal lock preservation solely, then that would be appropriate for the historic use of historic funds. But I don't see how the dredging aspect of it would apply to the use of historic funds. That's my
Yeah, and
I think I can shed a little light on that. Dick was saying that he wanted to restore the canal to its original depth as it was historically when they were using the locks. And I mean, I agree with the project. I would love to see the project done. I think it's very important, not just for the historical aspect, but also for conservation, for, cleaning up the lakes. I think it's a step, like you're saying. I think our concern was more that it's paying for paperwork and not the project. So I think, having some concerns more about that than the project.
And I guess the reason why I'm trying to promote it tonight is I think it's a worthwhile project that has tremendous benefits for the town. And as Marcus said, and I think we should all be aware of this, with these big communities getting into the community preservation money, it's going to dry up very fast. It isn't going to matter that we got 3% anymore. It's going to dry up. It's going to go away because these large communities aren't going to be preserving land. They're going to be redoing their parks. They're going to be redoing their canals and their railroad stations and things like that. And that money's going to disappear because they have the political clout that we do not have as a small rural community. So I would hope that you would look at this project, particularly, again, not to be repetitive, that we have the money. It would be a great first step in by putting up these historical signs and having the Historical Society promote the canal system. I think people would have a better appreciation of our lakes and have a better appreciation of preserving land like North Pond and cleaning up our lakes and maybe doing the algae treatments. Make people understand why we became a recreational community and why people want to live in the town of South.
Russ, to your point relative to the funds, if you take a look at, we just got this information tonight. We had an 88% match from the state in 2014. It dropped to 66% in 2015. Marcus said it was 60% last year in 2016, and we're looking at less than a 44% match coming 2017. So we are not going to be accruing monies like we have in the past. We have to be very careful and prudent as to how we spend that money.
I don't think anybody on the committee thought it was, excuse me, that dredging was a bad idea. They all thought it probably should be done, but we didn't want to put ourselves in, the way it was presented to us is we would pay for the engineering and the permitting. And it was left up in the air if we would get the permitting. And it was also left up in the air, where is the millions of dollars to dredge come from? So all we were buying is some engineering drawings and some permits. And I was very afraid. There are critics to the Community Preservation Commission, and if they see us paying $150,000 for a pile of paperwork and not getting any guarantee that we're going to get any dredging, anything done, then we would look a little silly. And that's the reason we didn't vote for it. Not because we think it's a bad project. We didn't want to leave ourselves in the position of spending $150,000 and receiving nothing for it.
There are state monies that have not been released, full disclosure, but there are monies there set aside.
I'm sure there are, but as you mentioned yourself, that there's a ton of other communities vying for those monies, and no guarantee we'll get a dime of it.
Right. But the former governor did obligate certain funds, but the funds were not released. Now, I don't know what the new administration is going to do, but I know one thing for certain, John, that if we don't do the first step, we're not even going to be in the game at all.
We can't apply unless you
Right.
have to decide.
Right. And again, I wouldn't be pushing this if we didn't already have the funds available. And I think a good thing might be, let's put it in front of the voters and give the voters an opportunity.
Any other public comments? This is a review of the Community Preservation Act. We're required once a year to have an informational meeting. So any concerns or anything you'd like to comment about? Yes.
I just wanted to respond about the canal from a historical perspective. It sounds really interesting from a historical perspective as well as conservation. And I know that states like New York have done similar restoration efforts that really draw in a lot of people. Obviously different types of canals, perhaps more substantial, but certainly worth, you can like probably Google it, you know, the restorations in the Erie Canal areas and in western New York. So I think these things have probably been done before, maybe at different scale, so it's exciting to think about.
I would like to make a comment about the future of the CPC, and I probably am a little naive, but I was thinking with these big towns wanting those funds, that they would push our leaders to increase the amounts and not let it die. As I said, I might be naive in thinking that.
You're a little naive. We're a little in debt.
Boston's not too far away. Take a bus.
Anyone else have any comments or questions? If not, I'll ask for a motion to terminate this.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.